Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with another video, kind of depotting palettes. If you haven't seen my last palettes on the shopping block series, I talked about these two palettes right here, which is the Jacki Aina palette from Anastasia, as well as the Subculture palette from Anastasia. These palettes are both stunning palettes, and I really don't want to get rid of them because there's beautiful shades in here that I love. Like the shades in both these palettes I absolutely adore. But there's also shades in each that I never use. So I want to go through these palettes today, and I actually want to combine them into one palette. So that's kind of what I want to do today. So this is going to be a bit of a learning curve for me because I've never done anything like this before. So I am going to heat these palettes up, and I'm going to try to depot them. I do have some safety pins that I'm going to try to use to get out the shades. I have some baking paper, and I'm just going to heat them up on the stove. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to keep it on very low heat and keep it safe, but yeah, it's going to be a bit of trial and error. But before I jump into any of the heating up and the potting of the palettes, I'm going to go through these palettes and decide what I want to keep first. But before I jump into that, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I would love to have you in the family. Let's jump into the video. So here we have the two palettes, and okay, I'm going to go through first and look at what I really want to keep. So first up, I do kind of feel like I want to keep this part of the palette here. Illustration, I'm not sure about, but I for sure want to keep Lovelies. Credit. Ginger. Sponsored, which is one of my favorite shades from this palette, and Edges. So I for sure want to keep those 5. From this palette here, actually, before we move on, I also want to for sure keep Sam. It's one of my favorite shades, not just in this palette, but also in my whole collection. So there we have those. Okay, so moving on to this palette here, what do I for sure want to keep? Another one of my absolute favorite shades is the shade Electric. I want to keep that too. I love the shade Roxy. It's a really beautiful kind of corally tone transition. I want to keep that. I do love the shade Dawn, but if I can't fit that, I can't fit it. I do, however, feel like I want to keep Fudge. But is that too excessive with other browns? We'll see. I'm going to try to keep that one for now. New Wave. And Edge. Okay, so that's the first kind of part of the palette. So how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, so I have 11 shades right now, which means I can fit 3 more. I do feel like I do want to include Trust Issues, because it's a really nice in the corner shade, which I think will go with the palette. I think I'm going to want to include Dawn. I like Dawn. It's a light transition. I'm going to include that. You can't really see it much, but it is a really light transition from me. So we can have 1 more. So Cube is one that it's like a red iridescent. I have better red iridescent, and I don't feel like that goes with the Cordosaur, so I'm going to skip over that one. With Destiny, I feel like it's not green enough for what I like, but maybe it would work well with Sponsor though. I mean, that would work really nicely. So Destiny is a contender. I feel like with Adorn, I have better shade with Sam, so I'm not going to take that one. We have All Star, which All Star is quite pretty too. But I feel it kind of falls into this deep part, so it's like not too far off from Credit, so I'm going to skip that one. This one is a beautiful one, Mercury, but it's not really going with the color story. Axes I don't really use. We already included these, and then these two I'm also going to skip over. So nothing else that I really want from the Subculture palette. What about in here? I mean, Soleil is quite nice. That's definitely an option. I love the shade Supreme, but I'm just worried if it's going to go with the color story or not. I'm going to skip over these two because I never used them. Drawless I've already included. Credit to Lithuanian. It's like, no, it's too satiny. I don't use those type of shades, so I'm going to skip over that one. We already took Sam, Wiggly's, and Sugar Tone I never use, and these are already picked. So it is really between Destiny and Supreme. So I'm going to compare and see which one I prefer with the color story. I mean, I think Dawn goes better with the color story. It's hard though. Maybe I don't need fudge. I like fudge though. It's such a good kind of brown. I'm gonna try credit and fudge, and I'm just gonna compare these two, like blend it out to see if I need both of them. I mean, those two are very different. Fudge is way lighter. I mean, Supreme is definitely the odd one out, isn't it? I like the pink, but I think I'm gonna go with Destiny instead. I feel like it's gonna round out the palette better. So I think this is my final color story right there. So that means from the Jacki Aina palette, I'm gonna keep these 5 here, Anastasia and Sam. So that's 7, is it? I think so. And then from this palette here, I'm gonna keep Dawn, Destiny, Roxy, Electric, Fudge, New Wave, and Edge. That is also 7. So 7 from each palette, which makes it quite interesting because, yeah, that's half-half. So I have thought about it and which packaging I want to keep, because obviously I need to keep one of them and declutter the other. And I think the one I'm going to keep is the Jacki Aina one because it's more unique. It's quite pretty with like the holographicness of it, or like the more iridescentness of it, I guess. But also I feel like it's not going to get as dirty as the Subculture palette. So that is the one I'm going to keep. It might be a bit of a silly move because I feel like the mattes are going to be more fragile to get out of the Subculture one. But I'm going to stick with that. So I'm going to go ahead and practice getting things out of this palette first, the things I don't want to keep, and then we're going to move on to this one next. It was a little bit more fiddly than I thought, so I have actually taken out all those shades already. But yeah, this is what the palette looks like now. These are the shades that I want to keep in here. And I did a pretty good job with getting things out, so sorry about this. This is the safety pins that I'm using. But the shades, like there's a little bit of crumbling in some of the shades, but overall, pretty happy with that outcome. So those are the shades that I took out, and these are the ones that I'm staying in. So I'm gonna move on to the Subculture palette next, which I'm more worried about because I know these shadows are more fragile, but worst case scenario, I just have to repress them, and fingers crossed it will work out. I mean, if I can keep the pans that I have in here, that would be the dream, but we're just gonna have to see how it goes. So that is what this palette looks like now. So we're gonna move on to the Subculture palette next. Okay, so I started going through these and I started trying to put these mattes, and it's just not moving. Instead of that, I moved out this cube shade, which I'm not going to have in the palette because I think I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to keep this palette because I know these mattes are more fragile. So I'm going to keep this palette because I don't want to mess it up. Yes, the packaging might get more disgusting as we go, but I just don't want to risk breaking the mattes, and especially all the pans I have in here. So I'm going to go back to Jacki Aina palette, get out the remaining shades, and put them in. Actually, let me take out these shades first that I don't want to have in here, and then we move on to the Jacki Aina palette. So here we have the Subculture palette now. These are the shades that I want to keep, and I actually did pretty okay. Some of them got small little cracks in them, like especially Axis. That's probably the worst one. Destiny has a little bit of a track, but like mostly did pretty okay. But again, I didn't want to risk it. and I don't want the eyeshadows to be fragile in the palette so they will crack later on. So I feel like I'm happy with the decision that I made by keeping this palette as is. So now I'm just gonna take out the rest of the pans in here, and I'm gonna move them over to here, and then I'm gonna like to figure out like what layout I want, because originally I was really excited to have these here and then like another shade here, for example. I think I was gonna put electric here, but now I need to figure out another kind of layout on how like I want to like have this palette now when it's kind of, yeah, in this palette rather than this palette, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. So I'm gonna take out the shades from here. So here we have the shades. It went pretty well. I had one casualty, ginger, if the camera will focus right there, yeah. So this one cracked. I tried to press it down as best as I could, and I'm hoping it's stable enough to start using, but when I repressed it, there was a chunk that ended up in the middle, which means that I lost the pan. But that's not too bad. At least none of the others shattered. I also got a little bit of crack in the other two mats, but I feel like I pressed them down, they're stable enough now. So then it comes down to organizing the palette. And this is the interesting part, because originally I was thinking putting this one here. I don't know. This is hard, man. Maybe this one there. Maybe this one there. This one there. Or the other way around. Maybe something like that. That looks pretty good, right? Or should I put this one near the yellows? Oh, I actually like that one better. I kind of like this sand shade up here. Yeah, you know what? I kind of like it this way around. Or should I stick with this way? I quite like it that way. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it this way. So honestly, I'm just gonna start putting down the shadows. I mean, they're not gonna stick fully anyway until I completely like press them down, but or like until the glue hardens. But I'm gonna see if they stick like this, and otherwise I will use some more glue and just glue them down. But I think that is gonna be my palette, which, you know what, I'm really happy with that. It's a perfect like autumnal palette. Since I kept it in the Subculture packaging, it didn't end up exactly how I wanted it or how I originally thought about it, because I wanted to keep the little corner here as it was before. But yeah, I really like this palette. It's like the perfect autumn palette, isn't it? And it's like a perfect combination of the Jacki Aina palette and the Subculture palette. It's almost like a me version of the Subculture palette, and I really quite like it. So I think that is going to be this palette right here. So that is the Subculture palette, and then this one here is the other one that I have started fiddling with a little bit. I started putting stuff back in, and I really like the top row as it is, but I can't figure out what I want to do with the bottom row. I was thinking maybe start with like lights here and go down. I feel like the patterns here, like the holes for the Jacki Aina palette, are way tighter, so they're harder to fit the shadows in, but we're doing our best. And that is the last shade. So here is my Declutter palette. Honestly, this one looks really interesting. It's like a Halloween kind of color story. It's a lot of like Halloween colors. Like, look at this 6-pan here. Doesn't that look amazing together? Very much Halloween-esque. And then up here, it reminds me of the Chucky palette from Glam Light. So yeah, that is the Decluttered palette. So let me pull up the 2 new palettes. This is what they look like, and honestly I'm so happy I did this. This palette here is gonna be decluttered. Maybe I'll see if someone wants this. We'll see. I mean, I'm not sure how it would transport because I have obviously taken out the shades. They might shatter in transit, but maybe someone, if I can hand it to someone, I don't know if someone wants this, but maybe. Otherwise, this is my new palette that I'm going to keep, and I'm so happy. This is like my perfect autumnal palette, and I really love how this looks. So yeah, that is one of the 2 palettes decluttered. A bit of a different video for me today, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you would have kept any other shades or how you would have done these. And yeah, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys!